So I've been working on this fly for a couple weeks and testing it out, and like to report it works very well for sea run cutthroat. I've done well in lakes, and I don't see why it would not work wonderful in a river. So to start, we have a 4x long streamer hook, size 8, and a tungsten bead. I played around with brass beads and like gold, silver, black, red. It all works. So start your thread. I'm using 6/0 uni in red. Get a couple good thread wraps in there. Trim off your tag. Work your way down to about the point of the hook. And on this, I'm going to take a piece of 30-pound Maxima and just put a little guard on there so the rabbit strip we use later doesn't foul. And I like to push this up into the bead a little bit. I'm just going to help secure that and make sure the body stays even. Wrap it down nice and tight. Work your way back past the point of the hook just a little bit, just until the hook starts to bend. And then take the other end and wrap it around and form a loop. About that size of a loop coming off the back. And what that's going to do is just allow your rabbit strip to sit on top of that so it doesn't foul around. And then give that a couple wraps and just pull it down so it's riding parallel to the shank of the hook and wrap forward. You can get in there and cut off the excess and cover it all up with some nice thread wraps. Work your thread back down. And for the tail and the wing, I'm using the hairline black barred rabbit strips in Grizzly. And you want your tail to be about the length of the hook. Just measure it alongside. Find your tie-in spot. And just part those fibers so you have a nice clean tie-in point. A little saliva helps manage the hair. And what's nice about putting in that little guard is there's a nice flat spot to sit that chunk of rabbit right on top. Make sure that strip's sitting nice and flat before you totally secure it down. And 4 or 5 good tight wraps. You can pull this rabbit strip back and put a couple wraps in front. And for the body of this fly, I'm using one of my favorite materials, the Minnow Belly Ice Dub. Put a little dubbing wax on your thread, and we're going to do a couple passes with this just to build a reasonably thick body that we can pick out at the end. So a couple inch dubbing noodle on your thread there. Get that rabbit out of the way. And just start to dub that body. Don't dub all the way up to the bead because we're still going to tie in the throat and have to have room to put that rabbit strip. And then work your way back down towards the tail. Keep this dubbing noodle reasonably thin, not a ton. We're going to pick it out pretty good. Something like that. And you can work on making a bit of a taper in the body. I don't know if it makes a huge difference, but it looks nice. A little more dubbing wax. And the last round of dubbing. And you can play around with different body colors, different rabbit strip colors. I've done it on smaller hooks with squirrel zonkers and sculpin olive that work really well. I've just been fishing the one with this grizzly rabbit strip lately, and it's been working excellent, so I'm sticking with it. So now, make yourselves a little dubbing loop. Put that down. Get our dubbing spinner in there. And a little bit of wax. We can just let that sit for a minute. And another one of my favorite materials I don't see a ton of people using on flies is this red glow bug yarn. So we're going to cut a small portion of that and we're going to spin it in that dubbing loop. If you haven't used glow bug yarn before, once it gets in the water, it just absolutely glows and adds a nice bright hot spot throat. So we're going to take a little pinch like that, throw it in our dubbing loop, make sure it's centered, and we're just going to spread out the fibers a bit, just so it's not all bunched together. Doesn't have to be perfect, but just a little more sparse. Give that a good spin. And then take your favorite dubbing brush. Mine happens to be this finger dubbing brush. And just brush the hell out of it. Really free up any of those trapped fibers. And when you think it's good enough, we'll go ahead and wrap the collar. So moisten your fingers and just kind of preen some of these back so it's all facing the right direction. And just try and get some nice touching wraps to build a nice bright hot spot, bloody baitfish type throat on this thing. And about 3 wraps is pretty good. And you can tie off the excess there. And give it a snip. Pull that all back. Put a couple good thread wraps in front of it. Make sure it's nice and secure. And here's where we can kind of pick out our body and untrap any more of those glow bug yarn fibers that got matted down. And with your fingers and kind of pull them down since we're going to be putting that rabbit strip right over the top. And so bring your rabbit strip over. Find right where it meets the bead and split that hair. You can use a bodkin or a pair of scissors to help kind of get some of that fur out of the way and give you a nice clean tie-in point or tie-off point. And tie off that rabbit with a couple nice tight wraps. And pick that rabbit up and try and trim it as close to those thread wraps as you can. And if there's still a little hide showing, I just like to cover it up with thread, which will add to the collar and kind of bloody gills look this fly has anyway. Once that's nice and cleaned up, throw a whip finish on it. Trim out our thread and finish it with your head cemented choice. I'm just going to use the solar as bone. Get all those threads. You can even kind of creep up on that bead a little bit. Help secure everything in place. Make sure that bead doesn't spin. And then give it a zap with the UV light. And we're good to go. In the water, it looks just like a small juvenile bait fish in other colors. It'll work great as a sculpin imitation. You can scale it down in size, up in size. You can tie it on a jig hook. Just all around great producing little bait fish streamer.